This is a short video that explains the organising behind Glasgow's Lament for Climate Justice. It was held on the 30th of October 2022. It was organised by Breathe, led by Tess Humble, Glasgow's lead organiser, alongside community groups including Gale and Lindsay McGee from Kinning Park Complex. The organising journey and seeds of the Lament were sown around the COP26 in November 2021. The COP is the annual UN climate summit which decides the fate of the living worlds. This year was seen as a huge opportunity to grow the climate justice narrative and the climate justice movement. The organising against the COP began in 2019. This took place through community engagement in Glasgow and in the UK, through political education across the UK and around the globe, and through broad coalition building across the left, from conservative NGOs to grassroots groups pushing for systematic change. 2 years of organising resulted in mass mobilisations for climate justice on the Global Day of Action. This was the 6th of November. There were hundreds of actions internationally and 100 in the UK alone. In Glasgow, we saw the UK's biggest climate demo, which Tess helped oversee. Over 120,000 people marched on the streets, from climate activists to trade unions to racial justice groups to community groups. It was a powerful display of solidarity around climate justice. What we saw next, though, was the depletion of the climate movement. Burnout, grief, frustration started to unfold alongside uncertainty of where we go next. At the same time, we saw the rise of campaigns and organising around workers' rights and cost of living as economic injustice bills and inflation soared. 2022 saw Breathe start work in Glasgow. Throughout this year, we had one-to-ones and supported community groups across the city to build relationships. We spoke and worked with the climate movement. How are you looking after yourselves? Where do you go next? We spoke with the racial and migrant justice groups. What are your biggest threats right now? How do we stand in solidarity? We spoke with faith groups. How do you continue to root climate injustice? We spoke with community groups. We spoke with cost of living campaigns. How do we stand in solidarity and how do we grow power? From these conversations, we started to organise for the Lament. The organising really began to unfold across August and September 2022. With the eve of the COP26 anniversary looming, and after a year of broken climate promises, devastating climate impacts around the world, the rise of cost of living and poverty in the UK, and the ramping up of the hostile environment, it was clear that we needed to meet in a gentle and more healing way, to gather to mark 1 year from the COP. And this healing space was particularly important in the midst of the burnout, the exhaustion of activists and community workers, and the rise of resistance around economic injustice. We spoke to community organisations. What do your people need? What would be useful right now? We spoke to community leaders. How do we achieve this? Do you want to help? And we spoke to wisdom holders. How do we hold this space? What does it look like? How do we make it accessible? How do we hold it well and with care? And from here, the core group for the Lament was formed. Members of the climate movement and other people who care joined. From a spiralling collection of ideas and needs, we birthed Glasgow's Lament for Climate Justice. On the eve of the anniversary of COP26, and as leaders gathered in Egypt for COP27, we held the Lament in Glasgow Green, where 1 year earlier there was the rally for the COP26 demo. 40 of us gathered around fire, migrant justice groups and people who've experienced racism, people from housing associations, members of the climate movement that were burned out, as well as the members of the public passing by joined in. From our diverse spaces and our diverse social movements, each one of us had space to tell our stories. Each one of us had space for our struggles to be witnessed and the pains of our communities and of our fight. These pains were breathed into the air together. Collectively, we created a container for our stories and struggles to be witnessed. And after 2 hours of stories and of song, we all committed our struggles to the fire for them to be burned for everyone to see. This was a lament where we collectively reimagined ways to gather to hold our grief. We did so in the void left as grieving mechanisms were removed from Scotland as the tradition of keening was suppressed. This lament was a recognition that it's the same systems that raped our forest, displaced our people from around the world, caused huge economic inequality, and that's causing climate breakdown. It is these same systems that removed our old ways to gather, to grieve, and to heal, and to hold each other. Across the fire of the lament, we built a deep trust and bonds from hearing our stories and our vulnerabilities. This lament looked to build power through this healing space, and to forge deeper relationships, which would be our foundations of resistance. We ended the lament by tying ribbons of hope and resistance to the railings. We then gathered around song and food and drinks, with more people gathering us on the way, joining us on the way. We laughed, we sang, and we connected well into the evening. This was a space of deep joy. From this day, the call to action was clear: to embed care and healing into our work in order to build stronger, healthier communities and movements to fight back. To embed relationships and trust at the core of everything that we do, making sure we see and hear each other fully, to build stronger and more powerful solidarity. And lastly, to centre the most impacted. Healing spaces are not just for the climate movement, and nor are they for the privileged. Healing spaces must centre those that need it the most.